Howdy y'all, and welcome back to another episode of SmoothBrainEDH, where we make the smoothest plays with the biggest brains. Happy Halloween, y'all! This week, the Smoothies have decided to build decks and come up with costumes around those commanders. So let's see what everyone brought. Our players are introducing their decks this week, so let me send it over to them.
Hello and welcome to the interview. I'm here with...
Large Michael.
And you're playing...
Wick.
And that does...
Rats.
Thank you. Hello, I am here with...
Ethan.
And you are playing...
Volo, Guide to Monsters.
And he does...
Civic stuff, I don't know.
Thank you.
Why did you throw your commander?
Because I could.
Hello, thank you for joining us. You are...
Cameron.
And what are you playing?
I'm playing the Swarmweaver.
And what does that do?
It's not bees.
That's for sure.
What's up, guys? I'm Chandler. I'm playing Strefan vampires. Me and my family have been hunting this bastard for generations. Hopefully we get him today.
I hope you all enjoyed hearing from our players, but we're about to get to the game, so go ahead and like and let us know down in the comments which deck you're rooting for. Our socials and deck lists are in the description. Our channel is partnered with Dragon Shield, so check out the affiliate link down below if you want to pick up any new sleeves or magic-related products. Thanks to Dragon Shield for the code SMOOTH5, so if you use that for 5% off your entire order at checkout. Also, if you're watching this the day it comes out, we're in Vegas, baby! So if you happen to be here too, come find us and hopefully jam some games with us. We'd love to meet you. Now, on to the video.
Looks like Chandler wins the die roll. He'll start off with a Path of Ancestry, and look at that, so does Big Mike. He'll pass to Ethan, who plays a Hedge Maze, and he surveils Swiftfoot Boots to the yard, and then passes to Cameron. Oh yeah, and the Path of Ancestry's creatures are vampires for Chandler and rats for Michael. Cameron plays a Fabled Passage and will fetch for a tapped swamp and passes to Chandler while searching, who plays Swamp into Rakdos Signet and passes to Mike. Large Michael will play Training Center into an Arcane Signet, then pass to Ethan, who plays Rejuvenating Springs, then he's going to main phase a Growth Spiral, so he draws a card and puts in a Scalding Tarn, then fetches with the Scalding Tarn for a tapped Breeding Pool, and then the turn is passed to Cameron, who will play a Forest into Ripples of Undeath, and then he passes to Chandler, who plays another Swamp, and then he'll tap for 4 and cast Strefan. Path of Ancestry Scry is put to the bottom, and then the turn is passed to Michael, where he'll play Badlands, tap for 4, and cast Wick. We see another Ancestry Scry go to the bottom, and then on ETB, Wick will make a Snail. Sam's going to draw that token up and pass to Ethan, who will just play Tropical Island and cast Volo, then pass to Cameron. On his pre-combat main phase, he has a Ripples of Undeath trigger, so he'll mill 3 cards.
Bastion Remembrance, Grist, Arasta.
He can pay 3 life and 1 mana to return one of those to his hand, and he decides to with Arasta. After this, he plays Urborg, and then he'll cast Life from the Loam to get back his Fabled Passage to hand, and then he passes to Chandler, who plays his 3rd swamp of this game. Then he'll tap for 5 and cast Malakir Blood Witch. Ancestry Scry stays on top. ETB trigger. Each of his opponents will lose 2 life, and he'll gain 6. After this, he'll move to combat and swing for 3 commander over at Ethan in the air. Chandler will then pass the turn, and on end step, Strefan will trigger. Thanks to the Malakir Blood Witch, each of his opponents lost life, so he'll create 3 blood tokens. Let's move to Michael's turn. He'll start off with an Underground Sea, then tap for 4 and cast the Roaming Throne. As it enters, he'll choose Rats, so when it enters, Wick will double trigger and put 2 counters on the Snail. Sam will then move to combat and swing Wick over at Cameron, who can't block, and then he'll pass the turn to Ethan. He'll start off with a Forest, then tap for 2 and cast Elysium Caryatid. On ETB, Volo will trigger and create a token copy of it. Then he'll do pretty much the same thing again, this time with a Maraleaf Pixie. Ethan will then move to combat and swing for 3 commander at Cameron, who just has to take it. Brother needs to get a blocker out. The turn is then passed to Cameron, and on pre-combat main phase, he's got another Undeath trigger.
I'll mill Swarmyard, Victimize, and Blood Spinner.
And he declines to get anything back. So then he'll just play a Forest, and then cast Arasta, and then pass the turn to Chandler. Chandler starts off with a Voldaren Estate as land for turn. Then he'll move to combat and swing Strefan over at Michael. Attack trigger, and he will sacrifice 2 blood tokens. This allows him to put Champion of Dusk straight onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking Ethan, and it gains Indestructible. And its ETB trigger will have him draw 3 and lose 3. On to blocks, Michael cannot, so he'll take 3 commander, and Ethan will block with one of his pixies. Then post-combat, Chandler will sacrifice his last blood token to discard and draw. The card he discards is Shadowgrange Archfiend, and Chandler will pay the 3 mana and 8 life to Madness to cast it. And when it ETBs, each of his opponents have to sacrifice their greatest powered creature. Greatest power was Roaming Throne, so Chandler also gets to gain 4 back. And also draw a card off the blood token. He'll then cast a Lightning Greaves and equip them to his commander. Then he'll pass the turn to Big Mike and create a blood token. Mike will start off with Rodents of Unusual Size, aka Pack Rats. Ancestry Scry will stay on top, and then Wick puts another counter on the snail. He'll play tapped Watery Grave, then pass to Ethan, who recasts Volo. He plays an island. He'll then cast a Felwar Stone, and then Ornithopter of Paradise, which Volo will copy. Bro's got mana, if nothing else. And then he'll pass the turn to Cameron. On his pre-combat, he's got another Undeath trigger.
Lanimore Waste, Conjurer's Closet, Command Tower. I don't want any of those.
Well, you heard the guy, he doesn't want any of those, so he's not paying. So he'll just play a Swamp, tap for 5, and cast Loth, then immediately down ticker to make 2 2/1 spiders. And then he passes the turn to Chandler, who starts off with a basic mount in his land for turn. Then he'll move to combat. Strefan goes back over to Large Michael, Champion of Dusk will go towards Loth, and then the Archfiend will swing 8 over at Ethan. Sam takes his 3 commander, and Ethan and Cameron will both put little dudes under the bus in the form of an Ornithopter and a Spider, and Loth gets a counter. Post-combat, Chandler will cast a Mirkwood Bats, and then a Phyrexian Arena, and then pass the turn to Big Mike. He'll make a blood token on instep, and each of his opponents will lose a life. Then, still on instep, Mike will tap for 2 and Deadly Dispute away his Pack Rats to draw 2 and create a treasure. Then we'll move to his turn, where he starts off with a Raucous Theater. Surveil stays on top. Then after this, he'll cast an Ogre Slumlord. Then play Fabled Passage and pass to Ethan. He'll start off with a basic forest. Then he'll cast a Prosperous Innkeeper, which does trigger Volo, so he copies this spell. When the copy ETBs, he'll create a treasure token. Then when the OG ETBs, he'll gain a life and create a second treasure. The turn is then passed to Cameron. Let's see what he mills. He doesn't pronounce it clearly this time, so I guess I'll have to do it. It's Drag to the Roots, Tainted Woods, and a Swamp. And he will pay to get Drag to the Roots back. Loth is then zeroed to draw a card and lose a life. Then he'll tap for 4 and cast the Swarmweaver and create 2 bugs on ETB. Then the turn is passed to Chandler. Arena trigger on upkeep. Then he'll move to combat. He'll swing 3 commander over at Michael, then 4 in the air at Ethan. Then with his Strefan attack trigger, he'll sacrifice his only 2 blood tokens to put in Timothar, Baron of Bats. Taps an attacking Loth, and it gains Indestructible. Michael will take 3 commander, then Ethan and Cameron will both chump, and Loth gets another counter. Post-combat, Chandler will move Lightning Greaves over to Tim. Then he'll tap for 4 and cast Kalitas, Trader of Get. And then he drops a Blasphemous Act. Big Mike will respond by sacrificing his snail to deal 4 damage to each of his opponents, and he'll draw 4 cards. Then the Blasphemous Act will resolve, and the board is wiped. Any of his opponent's death triggers that happen with non-token creatures will not happen thanks to Kalitas. And with his last 3 mana, he'll pay 1 3 times to Tim to have Kalitas, Champion of Dusk, and Malakir Bloodwitch be exiled and have bat tokens be created for them. You know, Timothar doesn't die because he is indestructible. Kalitas will also make him 7 zombie tokens, and I think Large Michael's Ogre Slumlord should have made a few rat tokens off of Chandler's creatures dying, but the table forgets about those triggers. Quite the eventful board wipe if you ask me. Anyways, the turn is passed to Michael. He'll start off with a Lord Skitter, then he'll cast a Shoreline Looter, Skitter trigger, and this will exile Life from the Loam from Cameron's graveyard. After this, Michael will cast Thonian Nightmare. ETB trigger gets him 3 energy. He'll then activate it by paying 2 energy and sacrificing his looter to return Pack Rats to the battlefield. Lord Skitter triggers again and exiles Mirkwood Bats. Then Mike passes through combat, and Lord Skitter will make a rat token that can't block, and this triggers another exile, and he'll hit Grist so Cameron doesn't have Planeswalker in the graveyard now. The turn is then passed to Ethan, and he'll just play another forest and recast Volo for 8 mana, and then pass to Cameron. Mill on pre-combat.
I will mill 3. Forest. Land. Farseek.
He understandably does not pay for any of those. His land for turn is going to be a Fabled Passage, and then he'll downtick Loth to make 2 more spiders. Then after this, he'll curse Chandler with Curse of Clinging Webs, and then he'll pass the turn. Chandler will start off with a Bloodletter of Aclazotz. Then he'll move to combat, and he'll start by swinging 5 zombies at Loth, and then 2 zombies at Ethan, and then the 3 1/1 bats will go over at Michael. And there's no blocks at the table, so Loth is obliterated, Ethan takes 8, and Michael takes 6. And those 3 bats will return the exiled vampires back to the battlefield. They are supposed to enter tapped, but Chandler can't read. Now the order in which they enter does matter, so Chandler will start with Kalitas, then Malakir Bloodwitch, and when she enters, the Malakir Bloodwitch's ETB trigger is put on the stack, which means all of Chandler's opponents would lose 4 and he would gain 16. Oh wait, no. With the Bloodletter of Aclazotz, it would be twice that. And it's at this point that Cameron finally decides to cast Drag to the Roots, targeting the Bloodletter of Aclazotz in response. And instead of it dying, Cameron's curse will exile it and he gets a spider. Then the ETB trigger resolves, now everyone will lose 3 and Chandler will gain 9. Then the Champion of Dusk will officially enter the battlefield and Chandler draws 4 and loses 4. After this, he'll play a Mortuary Mire as land for turn, and this will put his Archfiend back on the top of his library. Then he'll move the Lightning Greaves over to Big Tim, and then he passes the turn to Big Mike, who slams Kindred Dominance, naming Rat. Ethan has the first response in an Otawara to bounce his commander back to his hand. Chandler will also respond by casting Withering Torment onto Cameron's curse. So it is destroyed and Chandler will lose 2. So the board is wiped, and with his last mana, Chandler will pay 1 to Timothar to exile Malakir Blood Witch and make a bat token. Large Michael will then move to combat. He makes a 1/1 rat off of Skitter, which exiles Timothar from Chandler's graveyard. Then he'll swing everything at Chandler for 8 damage, who doesn't block. Yeah, it's about time Chandler got beat down for gaining that much life. He'll then recast Thonian Nightmare and get 3 energy. And he'll activate it by paying 4 energy and sacrificing a rat token to bring back the Roaming Throne, naming Rat. Wakamonacon is back. The turn is then passed to Ethan, and would you believe me if I told you he just recast Volo? Anyways, he'll pass the turn, and on end step, Cameron will essentially channel Altanok, the Thrice Called, to return Swarmyard to the battlefield tapped. Now let's move to his turn, where he has to mill 3.
Skyfisher Spider. Hornet Queen. Skull Clamp.
And he decides to get into the red zone by returning that Skull Clamp to his hand. He'll then play 3 Tree City on Insect as land for turn, then cast Balaged Recovery. This gets Victimized back to his hand. Then he'll cast Nyxweaver, and cast an equipped Skull Clamp to it. And then he'll pass the turn to Chandler, who starts off by tapping for 3 and casting Florian, Voldaren Scion. Lightning Greaves are equipped. Then Chandler moves to combat, and Florian is swung at Ethan and the 1/1 bat over at Michael. They both just take the damage, and upon connecting, Malakir Blood Witch is back, draining gain. And thanks to that drain, post-combat, Florian gets to look at the top 10 cards of Chandler's library, and he will exile Bloodline Necromancer. He'll then immediately cast it to return Champion of Dusk for the 3rd time. So when it ETBs, he'll draw 4 and lose 4. Then he'll play a mountain and pass to Mike, who will just start off by recasting Wick. Double triggers for both Lord Skitter and Wick, so a snail is created and it gets a 1/1 counter. Chandler then realizes he has 8 cards in hand and discards a Swiftfoot Boots. Continuing on to the Lord Skitter exiles, he'll exile Cameron's Hornet Queen and Chandler's Kalitas. Michael also remembers to scry 1 off his Path of Ancestry, and he puts it to the bottom. He'll then move to combat, and Lord Skitter makes 2 rat tokens, which lets him exile 4 cards. He hits the last 3 in Chandler's yard, and Cameron's Skyfisher Spider. And Gary the Snail gets 4 +1/+1 counters. Mike will then swing a 7/7 Pack Rats at Chandler, who just takes it. The turn is then passed to Ethan, who finally draws some gas. He slams Hornet Queen. Cast trigger, Volo will copy it, so he gets 2 Hornet Queens and 8 1/1s with Death Touch. Bro is feeling a little more confident right now, and I don't blame him. He'll pass the turn to Cameron. On upkeep, he mills 2 to his Spider.
Of course. Yeah. A Caustic Caterpillar.
Then pre-combat, 3 more to his Ripples of Undeath.
Canoptek Scarab Swarm. That's a fun one. And a Swamp. And a Soul Ring.
Cameron then decides it's time to go big mode, go wide mode, just like Ethan, and he'll cast Victimize. This targets Brood Spinner and Canoptek Scarab Swarm, and he sacrifices his Nyxweaver, and also draws 2 cards. They both have ETB triggers, and the target off the Scarab Swarm will be himself, because, Michael's probably going to pick his yard apart anyway, and might as well get the most value. And he makes 11 1/1 insects. Then he'll Surveil 2 and put Takenuma to the yard. After this, he recasts the Swarmweaver, and it makes 2 more insects on ETB. He'll then drop Eldrazi Monument. Oh boy, that's quite the army he has now. Cameron will then pass the turn, but Chandler will stay on end step to tap for 2 and cast Rakdos Charm. He chooses the mode, each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. It will resolve too, so Chandler takes 4, Michael will take 8, Ethan 11, and Cameron is just completely obliterated by his own board. And then still on end step, Chandler's able to activate Voldaren Estate for 1 mana to make a blood token. And then we'll move to his turn, where Chandler will immediately attempt to present lethal with a Sanctum Seeker. Ancestry Scry stays on top. Chandler will then attempt to move Lightning Greaves over to it, and Michael has a response here. He taps for 3 and casts a Bedevil, destroying it. Chandler still thinks he's got it from here though, so he'll tap for 4 and cast Anya, Maid of Dishonor. On ETB, he makes another blood token, and then she gets the Lightning Greaves. Chandler will then move to combat and swing for 4 in the air over at Big Mike. Then post-combat, he'll pay 4 mana and sacrifice his 2 blood tokens to Anya to drain his opponents for 4. And that is exactly lethal, so Chandler and Strefan are the winners. Congratulations. Alright, welcome to the end of the video, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed. I sure did. Man, Cameron and Ethan actually almost came back at the end of that game, but that damn Rakdos Charm. That card is so good against go-wide strategies, holy crap. I wouldn't have had the patience to do that. If I were at that table, I probably would have used it early to get rid of Cameron's graveyard. And let's not beat around the bush. If Large Michael had got another turn there, he probably would have won as well. Chandler probably won because he got to go first. But anyways, let us know what you guys thought down in the comments below. If you liked it, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. But that's enough out of me today. I hope you all have a smooth day.